Greetings from Western Kansas. My name is Jay Young, and along with my father, Jerry, we are the owners and operators of Young & Son Farms and Young Red Angus. In today's video, we're going to talk about regenerative agriculture and how it's changing farming, not just on our operation, but globally. Farmers across the world are being awakened to the soil health principles and are getting excited about the possibilities of what can happen if we get our soils in the healthiest possible position, how they can make more nutrient-dense crops, how they can reduce erosion, and how they can be more profitable by applying some of these soil health principles in their farming operation. So we're going to dive into that. Specifically, we're going to talk about how regenerative agriculture and applying the soil health principles and utilizing compost from Johnson Sioux extract has allowed us to be able to raise 200 plus bushel corn 2 years in a row without applying nitrogen or phos. So let's roll the intro and get into the video.
And this is what we all feel, let's just not deny it. Something pulls and it tears in the deepest place. This is what we all know. Why must we still fight it? It's time to open our eyes and acknowledge the writing on the wall.
Today's episode is sponsored by Regen Ag Labs. Regen Ag Labs is the lab that we trust. When we got started into regenerative agriculture in 2016, I didn't think that raising 200 bushel corn without applying nitrogen or phosphorus was a possibility. In fact, it wasn't something I even thought about. And even deeper, regenerative agriculture I don't think was even a big buzzword in 2016. It was just me finding out about cover crops, realizing I can raise a cow-calf operation just on cover crops. So it started off with me learning about what cover crops worked in what season and in our environment so that I can start a cow-calf operation. So we started Young Red Angus in 2016 based off that premises. And I was only focused on what's the best cover crops that I can raise that are going to raise the healthiest cattle. What's the most efficient system that I can put together? I dove into it head first with my focus on those things. So to be able to do those things at the highest possible level, I decided I'm going to watch a ton of YouTube videos and I'm going to go to conferences to learn more about how to raise cover crops that are going to be efficient and effective in raising amazing cattle. And so as I go to these conferences, I start hearing producer after producer talk about how they've eliminated phosphorus and how they've drastically reduced their nitrogen inputs to half or a quarter of what they were applying in the past. So as I hear these different producers talk about that, I get excited about what's possible, but I'm also intimidated and insecure and overwhelmed because in 2020, I've been doing it for 4 years and I didn't see really that big of a change. And a lot of times we would plant a cover crop on our dry land and we would see a yield reduction on our cash crop the following year. And so my partner, my father, Jerry, is kind of getting, anxious about, hey, is this cover crop thing really going to pencil in and pay for itself? So as I go to these conferences, I get more and more intimidated thinking like, how am I ever going to get where these people are? Where are we ever going to get to a point where I can eliminate phosphorus? And where am I ever going to get a point where I can drastically reduce nitrogen? And not only that, the science behind it really intimidated me. I didn't want to learn all of the words like exudate and aggregates and all of the way that the soil food web worked. I didn't really care about it because it didn't affect me raising cattle. So why am I going to dive into all those scientific terms that intimidate me and overwhelm me? And so I was at a conference and Dr. Christine Jones was talking about how you'll never get where you want to go in soil health if you don't eliminate phosphorus, because phosphorus hinders root exudate development. And if you can't develop root exudates, you won't build aggregates. And if you don't build aggregates, you can't build soil. You can't increase your soil filtration. So you'll never get to where you want to go if you don't eliminate phos. And so I started really thinking, man, I've really got to figure out how to get our soils in the healthiest possible position. And then in comes David Johnson with the Johnson Sioux Compost. So in 2020, I was at the Colorado Conservational Tillage Association's conference. So at this conference, I got to hear Dr. David Johnson and his wife, Wei Chin Sue Johnson, talk about the compost that they had developed called Johnson Sioux Composting. And so as soon as I heard him talk about this fungally dominant compost, if you took this compost and made an extract and applied that to your seed or applied it in furrow, you would be able to eliminate phosphorus, and you could cut nitrogen use by 85%. So farmers that had started utilizing Johnson Sioux compost were the most profitable when they eliminated phos altogether, and they cut back their nitrogen use to 15% of what they normally had done. So I was really, really excited about the possibilities of what we could do with Johnson Sioux compost. At this point in the video, we have two camps. One camp is my subscribers who know all about Johnson Sioux, and they're watching because they've seen the nitrogen myth video, they've seen the phosphorus problem, and they want to know, how did our corn do this year? And what were our yield results for 2022? The rest of you are like, what the heck is Johnson Sioux compost and how does it work? For those of you who are my subscribers, you need to skip to this point in the video. For everyone else that doesn't know anything about Johnson Sioux compost, keep watching right now. Okay guys, here we are in the shed where we keep our Johnson Sioux compost. Right now, I'm gonna cover the importance of the Johnson Sioux compost and then how we build them. And then if you want any more information after that, you can go and subscribe to our channel and check out some of the other videos we have. So let's talk first about why they're important. Johnson Sioux compost is extremely important in farming and in gardening because in traditional agricultural systems where we utilize tillage, those systems kill the habitat that allow the fungus and the bacteria that we need to raise healthy plants where that bacteria and fungus thrive. So if you are utilizing tillage, that tillage patches goes through there and it kills those fungal colonies that we need to raise healthy plants and to build soil. So the way a plant works in a healthy system is the plant puts down roots, those roots send out exudates, and those exudates attract mycorrhizal fungus and other funguses and bacteria to bring the plant the micronutrients it needs. So when we till, we kill those fungal colonies and the plant won't even put out exudates in a lot of our traditional farming systems. So when you have those systems and you dump it for so long, it destroys those fungal colonies. Johnson Sioux compost is a great way to get a lot of species of fungus and bacteria back into your soil so that you can improve the health and the life of your soil. So once you improve the health of your soil with the Johnson Sioux compost, it does a couple of things. One, it helps you reduce the amount of money that you're spending on input costs because right now, in our systems, we have a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus out in our soils. They're just tied up. So nitrogen is typically in the form of organic nitrogen, and it needs to be broken down so that the plant can take it up. And then phosphorus in our soil, we have a lot of phos out there, but it's just tied up with calcium. So these bacteria and these fungus break down those micronutrients that are already in our fields from years of over applying it and bring it to the plant. So as a farmer, it helps you save money. It also is important because it's going to build soil. So once you get that fungus and that bacteria back in the soil, the plant has its proper function of putting out exudates. Those exudates create aggregates, and those aggregates are what bind soil particles together and help a farmer actually build up topsoil instead of losing it. And we're losing topsoil in great amounts. So that's really important for the environment and the overall longevity of people's farms in America and across the world. So that's another reason why it's important for us to utilize Johnson Sioux and get this in our system. And then lastly, these bioreactors are going to create fruits and vegetables that are more nutrient dense. So a plant takes up the micronutrients from the soil through its root exudates, and it goes into the growth of the grain, vegetable, or fruit that the plant is producing. So in traditional agriculture, when we kill those fungal colonies, we don't have the fungus and bacteria species available to bring the plant the micronutrients it needs. We have to put those micronutrients out there, phosphorus and nitrogen, and so the plant is taking up the phosphorus, the nitrogen, the potassium, and whatever else we would put out there, but it's not able to have a healthy function and not able to get those other micronutrients it needs to have a healthy crop. And so plants today in a traditional agricultural system are much less nutrient dense than they would be if we were able to get this compost extract into our systems and we are able to start farming regeneratively. The quickest and easiest way to make a bioreactor is to take an IBC tote, if you can purchase an IBC tote like this one, cut the top off the IBC tote, drill a bunch of holes in it, and then put wooden blocks on the bottom, and then take the lid that you just cut off, that you drilled holes in it, set it in the very bottom of the IBC tote, and then you're going to take PVC pipes and you put those PVC pipes spaced evenly throughout the bioreactor. Once you have those pipes evenly spaced along the bioreactor, you tape them to the metal frames that you have going across here. Once they're secure, you fill the bioreactor full of wet material. And so you want it like 70% water by volume on the material. What we've used as the most successful is dried up corn stalks, a mix of dried up corn stalks, grass clippings, horse manure, and wood chips. So we really like that compost. This is what it looks like right here when it's mostly broke down. This is 8 months old compost. It's a fungally dominant compost. It smells like amazing potting soil. And so that's basically how they're made. If that doesn't make sense, I've got a whole ton of videos that get into great detail on how to build these bioreactors. These bioreactors back here are actually made, triple stacked up. So that way, if you do it that way, you're going to get more compost in the long run than you are with the IBC tote. We have a video that shows the different designs that we've used to make Johnson Sioux bioreactors. So make sure you wait to the end of the video and click on the in-screen elements, and that'll get you through all of our videos that show you how to build compost and get into greater detail on the importance of it. All right, guys, here we are at the point in the video that my subscribers have been waiting for since they watched the nitrogen myth and the phosphorus problem. Keep in mind, as we go over these results, it has only rained 11.75 inches to this point in 2022, and today is November 12th. So our normal amount of precipitation is 16 inches. This is the third year in a row that we've gotten under 16 inches, and I mean, I am saying that this year will be under. I'm guessing we're 4 inches shy, and I don't imagine 4 inches is going to come anytime soon since we're going to the dry season in our years. But I digress. But as I tell you what these yields are, taking a note that is how much rain we're sitting on this year. So we have 3 irrigated circles that we did for our test strips this year and for our yield results, because we had 5 total irrigated circles. 2 of them were cut for silage, and these 3 were cut for corn, and this is where I did our test strips. In the nitrogen myth video, I showed you 3 circles, and today we'll call those circles A, B, and C. Circle A is nozzled for 475 gallons per minute. Circle B is nozzled for 525 gallons per minute. All 3 circles have 100 pounds of nitrogen applied. All 3 circles got 8 gallons of compost extract applied in furrow. So we're really just testing how much can we cut back nitrogen and still be profitable. Circle A, we did a 5-acre test strip of no nitrogen and a 5-acre test strip of 50 pounds of nitrogen. Circle B and C, we did a 5-acre test strip of 50 pounds of nitrogen and 75 pounds of nitrogen. So let's start with the good news first. Circle A was my highlight and the thing I was excited about. We raised 207 bushels an acre with no nitrogen and no phosphorus applied, just 8 gallons of compost extract. Where we had 50 pounds of nitrogen, we were 3 bushels an acre less, 204 bushels an acre on 50 pounds of nitrogen. So still pretty awesome corn with 50 pounds of nitrogen. So over the entire field, we're at 214 bushels an acre. So by my math, on Circle A, no nitrogen was the most profitable. So that's the good news, is it was cool that we raised 207 bushel corn without applying any nitrogen at all for the second year in a row. The bad news is there's no consistency whatsoever on the other 3 circles. So a little bit more information on A before we dive into B. We had an irrigation well go out one day, and so part of the circle didn't get water for that full day as it was going around, and we didn't want to back it up in the middle of the summer. And so as it was going around, it put out less water there, and so the south half of the circle was closer to 200 bushels an acre, and the north half of the circle was closer to 230 bushels an acre. So that made a little bit more sense to me on that circle, that the 100 pounds of nitrogen was that much better going all the way around. And it didn't really affect our test strips because our test strips were east and west, and the sprinkler had gone past that east and west point of the circle. And so that's how Circle A did. The lack of consistency comes in circles B and C. So B was our worst producer. In fact, I don't even remember what the total yield was. We had a couple acres where we ran out of seed, and I wanted to try and see what the results would be if we planted seed that was not treated. Because when you have fungicide on your seed, I really feel like it hurts that seed treatment, and you can't, even though we're seeing great results, I think you can really, really improve your soil health if you can get to where you're not having any kind of seed treatment or fungicide on your seed. Yet we're still struggling with rootworm control. And so where I did that test strip, our yield was really, really low there where we did not have treated seed. So still behind a little bit on our where we want to be at for our soil health and being able to combat cutworm. Hopefully we'll get to a point where we can be planting seed that has no treatment. But I digress. This video is about the yield results. The other thing that you need to know about Circle B is we got hit pretty hard by spider mites on part of that field. So that kind of throws off our test results on Circle B. But results of the test strips were we raised 202 bushel corn where we only applied 50 pounds of nitrogen, and we raised 186 where we applied 75 pounds of nitrogen. So Circle A, our lowest results were 50 pounds of nitrogen. Circle B, our best results was 50 pounds of nitrogen. So 202 bushels an acre on 50 pounds of nitrogen on Circle B, and 186 bushel an acre where we applied 75 pounds of nitrogen. And then the whole field was in the 180 range. I can't remember the exact results, but it's not really a fair comparison because we had the big area where we were hit by spider mites and we got hit by the cutworm. Our stand was terrible where we did non-treated seed. So let's go on to Circle C. So on Circle C, I actually thought that was going to be our best yielding corn, and it wasn't. The whole field made 200 bushels an acre. So 200 bushels an acre on 100 pounds of nitrogen. And then our test strips of 50 pounds made 198, and our test strip of 75 pounds of nitrogen made 187 bushels an acre. So on both fields, B and C, 50 pounds of nitrogen was our most profitable results on those fields. So here's what I regret from 2022. One, I regret not doing a full rate of nitrogen and a full rate of phos, because I want to be able to silence the critics. And we did it last year. We realized it wasn't as profitable. I was like, what the heck do I want to do another test strip that has the full rate to prove what I already know? And I regret that now, because I'm sure people are going to have questions about that, even though last year we were more profitable without the nitrogen and without the phosphorus. So it's tough for me to want to do test strips with that, because one, I know that phosphorus, synthetic phosphorus right now in the form that we apply it is not good for your ground. It hinders root exudate development. Like, your roots will not put out exudates if synthetic phos is present. And if you're not putting out exudates, you're not creating aggregates. And if you're not creating aggregates, you can't build soil, you can't increase filtration, and you can't get where you want to be at soil health wise without eliminating phos. And so anyway, that's not for me. That's from Dr. Christina Jones. So take it up with her. So I regret that. That being said, I don't know that we're going to go through the hassle of doing test strips next year. We'll see. Right now, my business partner was not a huge fan of taking the time to cut out the individual test strips when we had a lot of corn to cut. The other thing that I regret is being so insecure for so long. So going to these conferences, I was always intimidated by the science that the presenters, if they were scientists like Dr. Christine Jones, Dr. David Johnson, Dr. James White, Nicole Masters, the list goes on and on. I was always intimidated by them and how much they knew, and thought, I have dyslexia. I don't understand things as well. I'm never going to be as smart as some of these other farmers that have all figured all this stuff out. So, I'm just going to stick to understanding the cover crop side of things. So because of that insecurity, I never took the time to do the Haney test, because I thought, I don't understand what the crap they're talking about with these tests. Why would I take a test I'm not going to understand what it even means once I get the results back? That changed when I talked to biomakers, and they, discussed with me the fungus and bacteria that was in our compost. So as they're talking about that fungus and that bacteria that's in the compost, they're like, have you ever done a complete soil digestion test that Regen Ag Labs does? And I was like, no, I've never even heard of that. So they talked about if you do a soil digestion test, it will show you how much tied up phosphorus you have and how much organic nitrogen that you have that's not plant available. And so if you do this test, it'll show you how much is there, and it really helps you understand, like, this is what the Johnson Sioux compost is doing. It's taking those the phosphorus that's tied up in our soils with calcium, and it breaks it down so the plant can have easy access to it. And so as I was hearing him say that, like, I'm like, I have to understand these things a lot better. And so I did a complete soil digestion test, and it really opened my eyes to what is really out there in our soils. And it made me realize, like, I've got to utilize more of these tests. So in 2023, we're going to pull soil samples. We're going to do a complete soil digestion test, and we're going to do the Haney test. And then I'm going to sit down with a tech from Regen Ag Labs, and we're going to go through everything that is in my soil and how healthy it is. And then we're going to figure out where I can cut back on my nitrogen and my phos and what I need to do to improve my soils. And I'm no longer going to be intimidated by the things I don't know. I'm going to take the time, I'm going to learn these things and figure out what I need to do. And that's why regenerative agriculture is changing the world. It's changing the perspective of farmers like me. I'm no longer farming, just going out and seeing what weeds I can kill and seeing, how much money I can make. I go out every single day and I think about life. I think about the life that God created within the soils, and about how there's all kinds of fungus and bacteria, protozoa, nematodes, earthworms, dung beetles, all kinds of life out in my soil, that if I learn how to keep that life alive and put my soils in a position where they're creating the most life possible, that life is going to bring life to my plants. It's going to make my plants healthier. It's going to make my soils healthier to where they're not going to blow in major wind events. And I'm going to be able to produce healthier crops for the consumer. And so it's changed my life, and it's changed farmers across the world, because now farmers are doing those three things. They're saving thousands of dollars on input cost. They're reducing their tillage, which is thereby reducing erosion in their area, whether it's wind erosion or rain erosion. They're reducing how much soil is lost on their farming operations. And all over the world, the farmers that are applying regenerative agricultural principles are finding that they're raising crops that are more nutrient dense. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you go to our show notes, we'll have a link for Regen Ag Labs page. You can go to their website and you can check out all the services that they provide to help you better understand what's taking place in your soil, so that you can make decisions that are going to be the best for your farm, your crops, and your consumers. If you like the music on the intro video, that was performed by my good friend Eric Goodell. You can get more of his music by going to the show notes and clicking on the link for Spotify and Apple. That's all I have for you guys. I'll see you next week, and keep pursuing soil health.
And this is what we all feel, let's just not deny it.